Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and today we're doing our first in-person, all of us together, podcast. So this is going to feel a little bit different, hopefully feel quite natural. And I have the whole editorial team with me. Well, apart from Lois, unfortunately, but we are all here present. So if you guys could introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Katie Pigden, Editor of Money Marketing.
Hello, I'm Michael Climbs. I'm a News Editor.
Hello, I'm Mohamed Mousadouri, reporter.
Amanda Newman-Smith, feature writer.
I'm John Sandrio, one of the reporters.
Okay, fantastic. So this is weird to do, like in person, but I really like it. I like seeing your faces. We obviously talked a little bit about the April issue in last month's monthly podcast, but now I feel like we can have a bit more in depth about stuff that you guys worked on in the issue. So who would like to go first and tell me about what stood out for them that they covered in April?
Kim, you mentioned that Lois, our chief reporter, sadly can't be with us today, so I will take the honour of speaking about her cover feature. It was Will LV equals Ever Find Love, and obviously we like the fact that it was written by Al LV, Lois Vallely. It's been an ongoing story for quite some time, actually. There was an interest from a private equity bidder, Bain Capital, that was going to go for LV, and there was talks of that. We thought that was going to go ahead. Members actually voted it down and decided they didn't like this idea. Then Royal London was in the mix as well. It's a fellow mutual, so it seemed like it might be a good fit for the two companies to come together, but LV decided, no, actually, we are good to go on our own. But Al Lois had great fun writing this cover story. It's very much in the style of, Will It Find Love? So it's like a dating app. It's got lots of things. We have hinted that the companies will need a good sense of humour if they are reading it. But it's all true and factual. It's just finding a different way to present it. It looks great in the magazine as well. There's some really good comments from people in the industry. The companies themselves didn't want to say much more beyond what they had initially, but so far it looks like LV has decided to go it alone unless we hear otherwise in future.
Yeah, maybe there will be an update at some point where we can do another cover where they have found love.
Yes, it may well happen. It's often the case, actually, when these companies then sort of say, we've re-looked at our strategy, we're going to stay as we are, and then a few months down the line, we may hear there's been another bid. There was obviously a reason that they were looking for a new investor initially, so I would imagine it hasn't completely gone away.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Mamadou, did you have anything that stood out for you in April that you worked on, whether it was online or in the April issue?
Yeah, in the April issue, there was a comment piece I did on the consolidation boom. And my argument was that, there's so much consolidation happening that advice firms, are kind of like taking advantage of, the boom, now, for advice firm, it feels like a kind of like a consolidation market. Like a seller's market, They have the edge, so that was my argument. For the April issue.
Okay. And how did you find kind of working on that?
That was interesting. Yeah, that was interesting.
I think barely a day goes by when we're not seeing a deal of some kind.
Exactly.
There's mergers and acquisitions are plenty.
Indeed.
Even today I was having a conversation with that. It's going to be something that we're talking about in our conference that's coming up. But it's just constant going on. Consolidators seem to be getting bigger and bigger. Advice firms obviously looking for an exit strategy.
Exactly.
So, interesting point to highlight.
Yeah.
On my part, whenever I am posting your stories on social media, I'm starting to run out of different ways to show a merger and acquisition that I haven't already done. There's only so many handshaking photos I can use.
We're running out of ways to say what's happening.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, I guess keep them coming. The news is great. So what about you, Amanda?
Well, I've been doing a piece about the new no-fault divorce laws. They took effect at the beginning of April, and at the time I was reading about it, law firms were saying, "Oh, we're going to see a spike in the number of people coming to get divorced," because apparently a lot of people were waiting for this legislation. It just meant that you didn't have to kind of argue whose fault it was, for the divorce, what grounds. It's normally unreasonable behaviour from what I've gathered from my research, but it takes that away. No one has to admit blame. But I was wondering, what this means for the financial advice process. Are we going to see loads of people coming to get advice about this sort of thing? But it was interesting, I think, speaking to advice firms, some were saying, we are going to see people coming forward, but it doesn't change the advice process. It's just sort of, the divorce process. But some people are also saying to me that, keeping in the spirit of not arguing, could we see people not taking financial advice, not taking legal advice, thinking they can do it amicably themselves, and then leaving themselves open to not getting what they're entitled to, and potentially being financially vulnerable. So that was the issue that I think really came to light for me, because I just didn't really think that was a thing. So that was quite an eye-opener. Can I also mention another story I've been writing about as well, Kim? I mean, this one was interesting. It's about wealth transfer strategies for women. I mean, around this table, we've all done stuff on intergenerational wealth transfer. I think we know it's a thing amongst advisors. Advisors also say it's a big thing for them. But what's not being talked about as much is passing the wealth on, not through the generations, but to female spouses. And this is something that Schroders were talking about to me. I didn't sort of come across any advisors who were trying to leave female spouses out of the financial planning discussions. Quite the contrary, really. People were, determined to include spouses. There was some comment about, what to do if people don't want to get involved. If there's a female spouse and they don't understand financial matters, they leave it to the husband. Well, where does that leave them when they stand to inherit the wealth? Do they move advisor or not? But, on the whole, it was more about building relationships regardless of gender, and then you build individual relationships as opposed to, just including the wife because she's the wife, you get to know her. So that was quite interesting for me as well.
Yeah. Do you think that was something that they would have been thinking about from the beginning?
It surprised me. I thought not, because I'd read some research which said, no, this is not something advisors were thinking about. But all the advisors I spoke to definitely were. That they were even including, illustrations of what could happen, cautionary tales, real life stories as to what could happen if you've got this, vulnerable woman who's not really paid a lot of attention to the finances previous to that, finding herself widowed, surrounded by, people that she didn't really understand. Well, actually, she's going to go and find her own advisor unless she can connect with someone that's already dealing with her.
Yeah.
Schroders did have some interesting stats around it, though, didn't they, in terms of that a lot of women are walking away from advisors if they haven't been involved in that conversation.
They did actually, Katie. I think it was about 70%. But when I looked at that research, I think it was from the US, so I don't know if the UK experience does differ. I don't think we're there yet on that research, but hopefully we'll come up with some stats soon on that.
I know in terms of my husband's dad, actually, he has a financial advisor, and not once has his wife been involved in the conversation, which I found quite interesting because, you view it as the household income, the financial sort of situation, and he hasn't involved the wife in the conversations or the grown-up children. So talking about that intergenerational wealth, which is, I think, something that Gillian from Schroders was sort of highlighting with me once before, that if women aren't involved, that's when they do sort of think, well, actually, this person hasn't bothered with me the whole time, so maybe I'll move the money elsewhere. But good to see that the advisors that you've spoken to aren't doing those kind of practices.
Maybe it's just the ones I've heard. I did speak to female and male advisors, so there wasn't a real gender difference in that either, which, you might have expected. So it's all very interesting.
It's weird, though, because, the stats support that, generally women do outlive men. So you'd think that advisors would be, thinking for in the future, better keep everyone in the loop so we keep them. But okay. And Mike, what about you? What did you work on in April?
For me, it was more of a an ending which was a very, very great relief that the Supreme Court dismissed Kerry Pension's appeal case, which finally brought a saga to me to a close. It's something I've been reporting on sort of ever since I came to money marketing, really, regarding a big a pensions court case about what responsibilities SIPP providers have to vet the investments of their clients. And the SIPP provider in question, Kerry Pensions, has fought this very, very hard in the court, so over several years. And finally, the Supreme Court just dismissed their appeal. So it's all come to an end, which is great. And I think everyone's relieved.
And they're not going to appeal the appeal.
No, they can't. They can't actually. That's the interesting thing. So if I think my understanding is, if the Supreme Court, if you appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says that's it, that really is it. There's no more, which is because it really has dragged on and on.
Yeah. That does sound like a relief. You don't have to go back and look at years of research and be like, go digging through it all over.
Well, that was the thing with this story, because it would sort of develop and then it would go very quiet for say 6 to 9 months, and then it would all start up again. So I'd have to re-research things, and then it was trouble finding my own reporting. Sometimes I was like, I'm sure I reported that.
You basically could have gotten a PhD in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
And finally, JB, what stood out for you in April?
So 2 things. The first one is the end of the London Capital and Finance Reader Scheme, which was supposed to close on the 20th of April. From the information we got from the FSCS, there were still a few remaining bonds to pay out, but essentially it more or less means the end of the LCF saga. And the second thing is, and it's been an issue going on since lockdown, is all the technical problems financial advisors, paraplanners, etc. are facing when they're taking the CI examinations online. So since the first lockdown and since the examination have been taken online, you regularly see advisors complaining or flagging up that they've been dealing with all kind of technical problems when trying to log into the exam portal, and it's still lingering. So
okay. Talking of the CII, Mike had a really good interview in our Emma Meets series in the April issue.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. That was really really interesting. Sian Fisher very kindly sat down with me in a very nice headquarters in the city and spoke to me for over an hour. And there's been some controversy about the CII and the leadership of the CII, which I'm sure everyone who's been reading the Financial Advisor trade press knows about. And Sian was just reflecting on her leadership during the COVID years, which was particularly challenging, and the financial situation the industry body was in. And that's actually a very nice segue, I think, to the May issue, because Alan Vallance, who is the chief executive of the Royal Institute of British Architects, has been appointed to replace Sian Fisher, and that story dropped, I think it was last week. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how he takes on the CII, and if his leadership will be a marked departure from what Sian Fisher was doing there. And I think I might as well now touch briefly on what is coming up in the May issue. We've got a very...
Actually, before you do, Mike, Can I bring in my own story?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Someone is missing it.
I don't want to brag, but
Katie normally always slips in at the end of the month with her story that will like say on like either month, and then we can't really mention it. But this month she came in right
at the beginning, right at the beginning of April.
Story,
and it stayed there the whole time, which was remarkable.
Yeah,
considering we had some really good content, but it was something that we've touched on in previous episodes as well. Service issues, Mamadou. I know you've done a lot on that front, and this was the Embark platform. And actually, for quite some time, I'd been hearing little rumours from people, or we're not very satisfied. Advisors are moving away from the platform, and I couldn't really stand it up at the beginning. So the more people I was speaking to, though, the more Embark just kept coming up, and I thought, well, there's obviously something there. And then one advice firm actually tweeted a letter that they'd received from Embark, and this was going out to clients, and it was confusing people about their money and what was happening. And I thought, right, okay, here's at least a way in, so I can start trying to find out a little bit more. Spoke to that advice firm, and they actually said, this has been going on for quite some time. We have advised our clients to move away from the platform, and they've taken millions and millions of pounds away from it. So the actual gist of the story was that advisors are voting with their feet. The service levels aren't good enough. Embark was on acquisitions itself previously. It acquired other platforms. It was then acquired itself by Lloyds, so it's obviously part of a bigger banking group now. But service issues keep coming up time and time again. Yeah. And so that was the one that took the top spot.
You think with all the technology, they would have sorted it out by now, but nope.
Yeah, apparently they are listening. They are trying to do something about it. How long it will be before we actually see those changes, or whether advisors feel that they can trust it and go back, will remain to be seen. But just the same across the industry, platforms, providers, there's lots going on, unfortunately. I'm sure there's lots of good stuff as well. And like I said, we are happy to hear about that, but it seems to be the bad stuff that works as a good news story for us.
Yeah, and it's also the bad stuff that always gets shouted the loudest everywhere. Like more people are complaining than being like, shouting praises, I guess. Okay, so since Mike was so gung-ho about going into the main issue, do you want to start us off with what we have to look forward to in May?
Thank you. I will do. I was very enthusiastic about the... well, first of all, the front cover is absolutely marvellous. So do have a look at that. I think that, it's one of the best images we've got yet on in terms of our covers. We've got a cover story on the British Steel debacle, looking at the potential redress scheme coming from the FCA. Written by our reporter Jean-Baptiste Andrieu, and Lois, our chief reporter, has done a smashing interview. Money Marketing Meets with Lamic Planners chief executive Ben Goss, tech visionary, and we've got loads of other great content to come in the May issue. And it should be hitting your doors very soon. So please do take a close look at it.
Yeah, cool. So JB, you've got the cover. Do you want to give us a little sneak peek for those who haven't?
So it essentially looks at the proposed redress scheme that the FCA published recently. I talked with an advisor, a lawyer, and an MP about what...
Sounds like the beginning of the joke. Sorry. What next? Anyway, sorry.
Thank you for interrupting me.
JB doesn't like jokes very much.
Sorry. He just laid it out there. How could I not? Yeah.
And so I talked with them about what the redress scheme will achieve and what it will not do. How it's still in the consultation phase, so it could still be improved. So that's essentially what I looked at in this cover story.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
Thank you.
I will probably give it a read. By probably, I mean definitely. And Mamadou, do you have anything coming up in the issue?
Yes, I definitely do. There's a comment piece I did on pension dashboards. You know, and that's something. I mean, I'm kind of like, interested in. You know, because I believe that pension dashboards. Will definitely be a game changer. You know, I mean, for many people, particularly young people or people who have like, multiple, pension pots. You know, so I wrote a very pro pension dashboard.
Don't give it away. But yeah, I think I'm pro pension dashboard.
Oh yeah,
I have so many random little jobs throughout my life that I need to have them all in one place.
Same with me. I can't wait to meet my pension pots. You know,
it's kind of nice to see it because I think with my other pension, like my current work pension, I don't really see it that often. But with my other one that I've put like in one place, I can actually see it growing kind of thing. Oh, wow. So I could be like, but I know that I can't touch it, which is good.
Yeah, exactly.
Because sometimes when it comes to my savings account, I'm like, that's money I have.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, diverting from the issue. Amanda, what about you?
Highlights for me. Well, I'm going to be talking about the cost of living crisis. I'm sure our readers are probably sick of that by now, but you've got one more to read.
Anyway.
Yeah. But we all know the cost of everything is going up. We just go and do our daily shop and we're reminded of it, every single day. And but I'm going to be taking a different angle. I'm going to be looking at whether this is reflected in the cost of running an advice firm, and if costs are going up, then what are firms doing to manage it. I thought of also looking at the expenses that can be written off against tax would also be useful in that feature as well, because I was sort of thinking about it myself and thought, well, my electricity bill's going up, but can firms write this off against tax if they're feeling the pinch on that front too? So that's my main one. I think I'm also looking at technology as well and how advisors should go about looking at their technology to help them run their businesses.
Okay. Yeah, so that sounds really interesting and very topical as well. Is there anything else people wanted to talk about for May? Not just the May issue, or just any stories that they are interested in looking into throughout May?
I think in terms of a few more from April, actually, there was some good ones with advisors in rows with Aberdeen over new contracts. I think that was sort of a combined effort between Mamadou and Lois.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Have you got any bit more information on that? What did that involve?
We're still chasing on that. We're still trying to get the advisors to kind of like speak to us. They're still kind of going through kind of like legal advice, so once they have that settled down, then maybe we can get something from that story.
But the initial one was the fact that there had been a sort of change of terms of contracts, wasn't there? And,
that's correct. Yeah.
And that some people had left or things like that. There was, I think actually Kim usually put up a nice list of what our most read stories were in the month. So they can always look online if they want to find some of the other ones as well. In terms of the May issue, obviously we couldn't do them without Amanda, really. So there's probably something on the In Focus, on equality, diversity and inclusion worth looking out for as well. A couple of other leaders and some good comment pieces as usual.
Yeah. Well, I think this was an amazing podcast. I don't know. I just really enjoyed it because I was in the room with you guys. I feel great about this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. Always a pleasure seeing you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. We also hope that you guys enjoyed it as well. I almost forgot that we're recording a podcast. I was having such a good time. But please do keep up to date with all of our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our podcast when it drops on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram now too. So we hope that you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.